When America entered the 20th century, a majority of the population lived on farms and depended on farm life greatly as a main source of survival. Women were expected to take part and help out in the work surrounding this lifestyle. As the century aged, women played many different roles in the development of the agricultural processes throughout their daily life as a source of survival for them and their families. Many women not only had to take care of their family and household needs, but they also worked on family-run farms or for other larger crop-growing businesses in order to generate additional income. Sometimes they even did both. In the early century, Morgan Hill was mainly an agricultural-based town, with many farms that ran for personal use, or as small businesses supplying locals with fresh produce. Women in the new century took part in contributing to the agricultural development, not intentionally, but because they were expected to help out their families. Since a majority of the population survived by farming, women in the family were expected to do the same rigorous labor as the men, while still tending to the rest of the family's needs. Women raised on farms at young ages were taught to operate all farming equipment. They were also expected to help out during the harvesting seasons by cutting down hay, wheat, and other various crops in their region. During this time, it was necessary for women to contribute and endure the same backbreaking task as the men, because their families depended on their resources to make ends meet. It wasn't unusual for farming women to have large families, because the larger the family was, the more free labor they had to tend to the farm needs, and the more free labor that they had meant that the farm could eventually grow to larger sizes. It was common during these times to see a large amount of children helping their families during harvesting season. This is how many women at young ages became introduced to the different types of agricultural procedures and how to distinguish bad crops from good crops. Women eventually became a vital resource for Americans' agricultural development because during the times of the American Wars, women were the ones left to tending to the crops and livestock. Americans depended on American women for these resources in order to keep their country thriving during harsh times. During the war times, many women also went to work in local canneries, such as Sunsweet Farms, in order to compensate for the men's income while they were gone in the war. The South Santa Clara County thrived on the growing of prunes. Many families depended on the bounties of this crop for survival during the hard times. During 1933, Germany banned fruit imports, a low point for California's prune industries, as exports to Germany made up half of the state's annual prune sales since before World War I. But when the U.S. entered World War II, demand rose for dried fruit products again. There was a song that oft was sung by children in this valley, when earthen members of the Grange met at the weekly rally. For years the words remain the same, though they often change the tunes. The young folks all remember 'twas when father sells his prunes. Then times were hard and money scarce. We didn't have the stuff to spend for fun of any kind. I tell you, it was tough. The mortgage interest wasn't paid, and we were shy on clothes, while Dad and Ma were both afraid the banks would all foreclose. The price of prunes was far below what it cost us to produce them, and many times I've heard Dad say, for hog feed we would use 'em. But now the whole thing's changed, you know. The prices are so high that Mother never makes a kick at anything I buy. Instead of coming to town to sell, the shippers come our way. All buyers from all the packing firms come to our ranch each day. The mortgage paid, the house rebuilt, and Dad's no more dyspeptic, while Brother Bill has an auto now, and Mom drives an electric. This talk of lower prices soon, to us seem very rank, for we don't have to sell our prunes, we've money in the bank. Many of the families in the Silicon Valley were dependent on prunes and apricots as a source of survival. Many women at young ages started working for canneries such as Sunsweet to help provide for their families while still helping out on family farms. Prune and apricot harvesting was very much a family job. Women took part in many different jobs within these processes, mostly to compensate for the lack of men during the war periods. Women often spent hours sorting through prunes and apricots in order to sell or get ready for canning processes. They mostly worked in small, crowded outside facilities with other women. Women started working in these processes in the early 1900s in very small numbers, but they quickly became the majority in these roles. Women eventually, in growing numbers, became the main population in canneries. They took the jobs men once held, operating heavy sorting and cutting machinery. Women of all ages ended up being valuable resources for many canneries. They depended on them for their success through hard periods of time and having a great lack in the male workforce. Women even took over jobs boxing and crating the crops to prepare for shipping and supplying to other businesses or towns. Along with sorting, cutting, packing, boxing, and shipping product for the local canneries, many women also worked cutting down the crops from the orchards. Here, many women stand in line waiting to get cutting materials before their shift at work. Once they obtained their supplies, they went to the orchards to manually cut down crops and bring them back to the canneries for sorting and processing. After World War II and the release of the concentration camps in the United States, many Asian Americans had no families or homes to go back to. A local strawberry farm owner of Driscoll decided to offer jobs and housing to these Asian Americans since it was hard for them to find employment amongst white people. Many Asian Americans and their families went to work and live on this farm. Asian women were taught how to go, care, and harvest these strawberries. They normally worked long days in the fields, caring for these crops, and oftentimes they had their children with them because of lack of resources to care for them. Driscoll Farms took many Asian American families and taught them a craft that some of the women used to start their own businesses when they got older. Throughout the last century, women have contributed to agriculture and its processes in many ways, whether it be from work outdoors in fields and orchards or inside at factories processing the crops. Women continuously were involved with our country's agriculture in one way or another. Their dedication and support in these hard jobs enabled our valley to become known for our wonderful crops.